focusing on just specific muscle groups each day and focusing on just making them bigger is not necessarily going to make you a good or a better soldier or a better athlete.
All right, welcome to the O-Call podcast. Today we're talking about Army fitness. Today I got Alec here with me. So he's a graduate of the Sapper Leader Course, and he's currently training up for Special Forces selection. So he's got a lot of fitness stuff to talk about.
That is right, Josh. Thank you for the introduction. I am a graduate of the Sapper Leader Course, so I've gone through various Sapper train-ups and different train-ups to help prepare me for the intensity of the schoolhouse. So I would definitely say functionality and performance is the most important thing to maximize. So you definitely want to be a athlete who can kind of take advantage of all aspects of fitness, so strength and conditioning, and then also cardiovascular ability too, right? You want to basically be that like all-encompassing athlete, somebody who can ruck for miles with significant weight on their back, and then also somebody who can carry their battle buddy over short distances and kind of an explosive movement, right? And then also going into just the basic requirements in the Army for physical fitness, the ACFT, right?
Yeah.
The Army Combat Fitness Test. It is a test that evaluates various aspects of fitness, right? Strength, explosive movements, endurance, speed and quickness. And if you want to maximize that test, which I recommend, I mean, somebody who can max the ACFT is somebody who I think is a solid athlete, right? Because I respect the test. I think the test is a really, really good evaluation of your athletic ability, especially if you're somebody who can nearly max it or max the test.
Yeah. And
you're only going to be able to do that if you train for functionality. So this is probably going to hurt a lot of the gym bros out there, but bodybuilding and doing a lot of like isolation movements, a lot of hypertrophy has its place, but focusing on just specific muscle groups each day and focusing on just making them bigger is not necessarily going to make you a good or a better soldier or a better athlete. It'll allow you to look very good and you'll build very aesthetic muscles. But are we preparing for a bodybuilding show or are we preparing for war, right?
Right.
And war fighters don't look like that. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but I mean the best war fighters out there, the people who operate on a daily basis in a combat environment, they don't look like that. They don't resemble that of someone like Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? They look more like you and I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say average. I mean, the average is constantly changing, and I would say the average in this country probably isn't somebody who's athletic looking, right? But definitely somebody who's leaner and has just those stronger muscle fibers, kind of like what a CrossFit athlete would look like. So those people kind of resemble the physique and the performance style of what a soldier, at least in my opinion, should resemble.
Okay.
Yeah. And so going into that, how I train is definitely more of like a full body routine. So I have an upper-lower split, and with some isolation movements definitely integrated into that. But upper-lower, a lot of compound lifts. I would say compound lifts are your best friend in terms of like building overall bodily strength, like developing your core, developing just like stabilization muscles, your balance, all of that. So like that means like barbell squats, barbell deadlifts. You can use dumbbells too. I mean, there's different ways you can meddle around with it depending on how your body reacts to these different exercises. I would definitely agree that finding the best thing for you is the best route to take.
Yeah, so like myself, I do the push-pull leg split. So I do all of those different muscle groups twice a week and then have one day off. So kind of same, just like not, I don't know, I don't work them as often.
Yeah, and you're also like isolating your muscles a bit more than I would. Yeah. Like in an upper day for me, I have two upper days. I have an upper day that's back focused and an upper day that's chest focused. Okay. So on the upper day that's back focused, I'm doing 2 compound back exercises with 1 chest exercise factored in and then shoulders as well. And then on my upper day that's chest focused, I'm doing 2 compound chest exercises with the back exercise factored in.
Nice.
Along with shoulders as well. So, and then I have a lower day, which is basically just legs, which would be the same, probably a similar routine to your leg day and your push-pull.
Yeah.
So like the major difference is really I'm incorporating basically my entire upper body on a single day.
Okay.
But I am putting a focus on one specific part of the upper body on that day. But I'm still working the muscles of those other muscle groups too.
In those compound lifts, right?
Yeah. And then, of course, factoring in long-distance running, rucking as well. So like, these are things that you do as a soldier. and as an officer too, right? Because as an officer, physical fitness is vital. If you want to be that leader that can lead from the front and inspire your soldiers, being physically fit is one of the first things you can establish, and it's one of the easiest things in my opinion. I mean, you don't have to be necessarily competent. You don't have to really know what you're doing necessarily. But if you have a body that's built for warfighting, you have a body that sets the standard, that's one thing your soldiers notice almost immediately. It's one thing my soldiers notice immediately from me.
Nice.
Because I can perform at a high level physically. And because of that, I can inspire others to follow suit. And that's what you want. I mean, as a leader, you want to inspire your soldiers to be better soldiers, and be better warfighters. And the only way you can do that is being as physically fit as possible. Competence comes into that, obviously, like being knowledgeable on what you're doing, knowing what you're doing to some extent. But physical fitness is big. I mean, being able to carry your battle buddy is huge.
With their gear, with the all that stuff.
It's vital. Being able to keep up with your soldiers too. Like, say if you're out of shape and you can't even keep up with your guys, I mean, that's embarrassing.
Facts. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, running. So on my upper lower splits, so like that's just my lifting routine. But I work out more than once a day. I work out with my soldiers in the morning, and then I work out on my own as well. And so I get up very early in the morning to allow myself to have the time in the day to do other things. I was working out in the evening at one point, but it wasn't conducive to a productive schedule because I was just far too tired by the time I got to the gym, and it was busy, and I could not get the same value out of my exercises as I could if I went very early before it gets busy and when I'm most refreshed getting up in the morning. And that's what I would recommend, honestly, for people out there who are trying to fit their fitness schedule into the busy Army schedule. Is you try to do it before the workday starts.
Yeah, and especially as like platoon leaders, on the officer side anyways, you want to be working out with your soldiers. So if you have your own program that you want to do, like maybe you don't do that with your soldiers, you come in early, you do your program, and then you do that second PT session with them. Or maybe you expose them if you think they're ready for it, depending on like what your MOS is and what you do. You expose them to it and say like, hey, if you guys are interested, like come freaking, I don't know, work out with me before PT or...
Yeah. Working out with your soldiers is a fantastic way to bond with them too.
Yep.
I definitely take that very serious. Like I love to work out on my own and have my own fitness goals, but I definitely prioritize time to be with my soldiers during PT as well. As officers, we get very caught up in our jobs. We get caught up in the paperwork and
additional duties.
Yeah, what the commander wants done, and we lose touch with some of the basic things a leader should be doing, and that's physical fitness, and that's leading your soldiers in good PT. Because I understand like the NCO side of things. That's their job, right? They control the PT schedule. They control physical fitness. But that doesn't mean that you can't get involved as an officer and be there. At the very least, just be present and set the standard. Like say you're on a run, right? The run's planned by your NCOs because they run the PT sessions. But you're present and you're outrunning everybody. And it's not that you're trying to just beat everybody like you're trying to compete with them and like fuck them kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, you're there because you want to be the one that's working the hardest, right? And that mentality is going to brush off on them, and they're going to want to do the same if they're truly motivated people.
That's fair, yeah.
And they're going to see that, and they're going to be like, wow, if he's doing it, why can't I do it? I mean, he's our leader.
Or they might even be like, I'm going to beat this lieutenant. Like, I'm gonna pass him up. Like,
it does create like a little bit of a
yeah.
competitive edge, you know? Especially with your NCOs too, right? They're like, the lieutenant's beating me? No way, I'm not going to allow that. And so it makes like a fun, competitive environment too, which is fantastic. I love that stuff. I love creating those kinds of environments. But you can only do that if you're in good shape and if you train, if you develop yourself, care about your physical fitness.
So earlier before the podcast, we were talking and you mentioned a lifelong commitment to fitness. What did you mean by that exactly? Or why is that super important in the Army? Yeah,
so not even just the Army, I think in general, fitness is a lifelong commitment. So we can have goals along the way, small goals to reach, but just because you reach a goal doesn't mean it's over, right? Doesn't mean it's stopping, it's ending because you reached your goal. No, I mean you continue this lifelong journey of fitness forever. It's something you never give up on, because the second you do give up on it, everything is lost. You lose all your progress and next thing you know, you're unrecognizable.
Well, not just that too, but like I don't know what studies, but they've shown that like the more active you are, especially as you're older, like you live longer too.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe this, and that this is kind of a philosophical aspect of this discussion, and this doesn't even relate. This does relate to the military, but it's not just applicable to the military. I think there are three pillars to life, and that's the mind, body, and soul, and they all complement one another, right? If you maximize one, it'll complement the other, and it'll feed into this triad that you're creating within your own being. Nice. That makes you an effective, productive, like optimized individual. Yeah, exactly. Like if you are physically fit, your mind will operate better. You'll be more cognitively there, and if you're more cognitively there and you're more physically fit, you will probably be more in tune with your soul too. Like you will just be a happier, more positive, more purpose-driven person.
Nice.
And that's vital in the military. I mean, as an officer, you should be the most driven person in that platoon. You should be the most happy to be there, the most positive, the most go-getting motherfucker there, in my opinion. Because a soldier shows up, they have no understanding of what's going on around them. Everything that they believe is going to be impressed upon them by their leadership. I mean, they're fresh. They're fresh into the military, right? And so it's a onus on us. It's our responsibility to develop that person into thinking that this is a motivating, positive, go-getting environment. And honestly, your NCOs are the same way, really. I mean, yes, some of them you'll find are older than you, have more experience for sure, and there's value in that. But how they act on a daily basis is going to be based on how you're acting too, and you're going to kind of set that precedent. I think, like when you come in with your attitude, with your beliefs, with how you interact with them, it all trickles down. It all trickles down. And when you're a platoon leader, one of the best things about being a platoon leader is you can almost have your own independent system that can be kind of separate and disconnected. Even if you're company command and you're in your battalion command, the environment around you is chaotic and unorganized and negative. You can kind of shield your soldiers from that as an officer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And protect them from that and create your own positive environment within your platoon. And I truly believe that, and that's what I try and do with my platoon.
Nice.
You know? But that, like you said, I think fitness is a huge aspect of that. Like you can only be that kind of person if you are in fantastic shape.
With that lifelong commitment, would you say that you like sacrifices have to be made to be that fit?
Without a doubt. There's so much sacrifice made in life in general. You know what? I think this is a great conversation because it leads into a more grandiose point, a meta point, in that the Army is really an analogy of life. You make sacrifices in your progression. Like if you are truly a go-getter in the military, in the Army, for example, and you're wanting to get after the next level and be the best leader possible, be the best person possible for your soldiers, for the people you're responsible for. It's really an analogy of life. I mean, it's like being a father or being a mother in a way. Like you have people you're responsible for, that you mentor and that you build up to be better people too. Like it's not just about you. Like you are serving something greater than yourself. And that's the best purpose one could have. Like if you only serve yourself, that's a narcissist. That's somebody how can you find happiness in that? I mean, we find happiness through our interaction with others. We find happiness through helping others, through the knowledge that we have and the experiences that we have. I truly believe that. Like we are meant to interact with one another. And in the military, it's a perfect opportunity for that. I mean, we're thrown in these positions at a younger age to have these grandiose responsibilities that most people don't have till they're much older, till they have a family. But like my family is my platoon, at least right now it is. Yeah. That's how I treat them.
Nice.
I'm not like saying like my soldiers are my kids necessarily, but they are my responsibility. I'm very
older than you.
Yeah, I'm very involved in their lives. We're all involved in each other's lives. That's part of making a collaborative, cohesive environment, right? And so, what was the original question?
So sacrifices made to be a fit leader.
Exactly. Yeah. So plenty of sacrifices are made, right? Like drinking during the week, right? Like if you're the kind of person that has to turn to these external substances to find happiness, you'll find that you won't even have time for those things if you're truly living life correctly. Like if you're occupying your time with these other things, these other positive things, like working out, making sure that you're there for your soldiers, right? Doing everything you can to make sure that they're squared away with their lives, and that your platoon is squared away in terms of planning and just providing all the resources possible for your soldiers and being a good officer. You won't have time for that shit.
Or maybe you just won't care to do it anymore.
and you'll forget about it. You won't prioritize it anymore.
Okay.
Your mind will. You're almost like in a way reprogramming your mind.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like you're reprogramming it in a positive way, where you care about these other things that are hard things, but once you become disciplined, I mean, the nature of discipline is doing hard things, but convincing yourself you love them, right?
Like waking up extra early to go get that extra
Exactly.
PT session.
And going to bed earlier so that you can facilitate that.
Yeah.
And so these other distractions in life, these other nonsense things that a lot of people kind of get lost in the sauce in doing, like alcohol and, Netflix, just like things that I'm not saying you have to necessarily completely get rid of it in your life, but limit, mitigates, because they just don't lead to anything. They don't lead anywhere. They're not going to make you a better person. They're not going to develop you. What will develop you is doing hard things, getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, the military is full of that too. You'll find in your jobs, you will have to make sacrifices. You'll be traveling. You won't be able to see your loved ones. If you're in a relationship with somebody, good luck.
Another sacrifice.
Not saying like that's not possible. Like you can work it out, but it's just, it is hard. And you have to accept that. You have to accept that reality.
Yeah. Would you say another sacrifice would be food? Like giving up all those like delicious carbs that you can't eat anymore because you have those short-term goals, part of that lifelong plan.
Yeah. I mean, I eat a lot of carbohydrates because I get energy from carbohydrates.
I'm in a cutting phase right now. So.
Yeah, I think it depends on the kind of person you are, maybe the kind of body type. But you'll find that you're burning a lot of energy, so I would recommend eating a lot. And this kind of goes into the importance of like meal prepping, like making sure that you're establishing a good diet that you can keep consistent.
Yeah.
And so like meal prepping, for example, like we can go into that, the importance of meal prepping.
Yeah, like finding out what your maintenance caloric needs are, what your goals are if you're trying to gain mass, lose mass, and then calculating the macros if you want to get like sciencey and nerdy with it. But like you do those things and you figure out what foods, like how to incorporate those foods that you do want into those diets, or how like, okay, now I might have to just sacrifice and like I'll get that, but after my goal.
The way I see it too is live life intentionally.
Yeah.
Right? Live life as if you're conscious of like how you feel and how you're operating on a daily basis. Like experiment with foods that work for you. So if you eat something and you genuinely feel good when you're eating, and I'm not saying necessarily like you feel good while you're eating it, like it tastes good.
Yeah.
No, when you eat it, it provides you the energy that you can then sustain throughout the workday and get your job done. Right? You don't have like stomach issues with it and such, and you get a good workout at the end of the day too, or at the beginning of the day. You just genuinely feel good. Eat those foods. Keep eating those foods. Like if rice and ground beef and chicken get you there, then consistently eat those foods. And if you find that like if you eat fried chicken, you feel like shit, then don't eat it.
It's like inflammatory or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, like just live life intentionally. Don't live in like an autopilot kind of mentality where you're like, you don't really necessarily care how you feel. I like the taste of it, so I'm going to sacrifice feeling good because it tastes good,
Yeah, I definitely sacrificed frozen foods. I had some really bad eczema, and when I stopped eating those foods, like that stuff, that cleared up almost immediately. Like when we went to NTC, like I stopped eating those foods. I realized that's what it was. That was the inflammatory, like whatever. And then I came back home, and I've cooked every meal since for the most part.
Yeah. Like diet is a hard thing to discuss because it's very variable.
Yeah.
It's dependent on the person and how they react to certain foods. I would say that there's like staple things, like you need protein, right? How you get your protein is kind of up to you. I will say like meat products are probably the best. Yeah. Meat products will provide you the best source of protein, but if you don't want to eat meat, like I get it, right? Like you don't want to kill animals or whatever it is, right? Whatever your virtues are, that's fine. But protein is vital for nutrition. So as long as you're hitting your protein goals, however you're doing it, whatever your process is for it, as long as you're hitting that, that's what's important. And then carbohydrates, fats, like getting those basic nutrients in. And through like genuine food sources. Like I would say a safe rule of thumb is stuff that comes from the earth is probably best to be used. And I always use an example. So when you're in the store, always shop on the outskirts of the store. Okay. The deeper you go into the store, so like the more
processed it is.
The more processed, the more bullshit you'll find, like kind of center of the store. But if you stay on the outside where everything's refrigerated, because natural foods can't exist like on a shelf, you have to refrigerate them. That's where you'll find most of the foods that are better
perishables
for you.
And all
like
that.
Vegetables, fruits, meats.
So what are your thoughts on supplements?
supplements. I think they serve a purpose. I wouldn't say that supplements are necessarily a staple part of the diet, but they supplement it, right? In their name, they supplement a meal.
Right.
So if you can't get your protein source in because you're so busy, a good way to do it is a protein shake, right? It supplements that protein source. It's not as good as eating meat. It's not as good as eating like a healthy, balanced meal, but it's better than nothing. If you need to hit a certain protein goal for the day, have a protein shake. I think it's a fantastic way to do it. And then also supplementing vitamins and supplementing. I know you supplement testosterone as well. I don't do that personally, but I think it could work for people.
Yeah, so the one that I take, it's literally just an herb. Like, I'm not giving myself testosterone. I'm not taking shots or any of that, but I'm taking something that naturally boosts, like, my own production.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for, like, I don't know, almost 10 years now. I'm seeing a lot of results. Another one I'll do is the vitamin D, because I work inside for my job right now for a majority of it, so I'm not getting that sunlight.
I supplement vitamin D as well.
Yeah, so, like, that multivitamin. I don't do fish oil anymore because I eat a lot of salmon, so I get my omega-3s that way.
A fun fact about fish oil, though, is that it does thin your blood.
Interesting.
And so if you do have a night where you're drinking, right, just have a little bit of fun, your hangovers will be really bad.
Yeah.
I realized that very quickly while I was in college.
Nice.
Because it's kind of like a blood thinner.
Yeah.
You absorb far more alcohol into the blood than you would if you were on fish oil. So you're far more drunk than you really think you are.
Interesting.
Very weird. So just keep that in mind. But omega-3s are important. It's an important part of nutrition.
Especially if you're eating a lot of meats and you're getting that omega-6s, you want to balance it out with those omega-3s. So if you're not eating a lot of fish, but you're eating a lot of like beef or, I don't know, pork or whatever, supplementing with that omega-3 to balance at that 3 to 6 ratio is pretty helpful.
Yeah. In my opinion, I would stick to coffee, but I know that can be hard for some people. Like, they just don't like coffee, and they might turn to Monsters and Reigns and Bangs. But just understand that, like, especially with a Reign and a Bang, they have 300 milligrams of caffeine.
Industry
per can.
standard right there.
I mean, it's a lot. So.
Yeah. Especially if you're drinking like 2 or 3 a day just to get by.
Yeah. That's, oh my God. If you're drinking 3 Reigns a day, you got to reevaluate yourself. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of caffeine. So yeah, going back to the workout split that I utilize to maximize my athletic potential and especially maximize my performance on the ACFT and then also just being an effective combat leader. I have those workouts attached in a link in the description.
In the description below. And if you want any more Army tips, tricks, advice, or whatever, check out any of these videos that I have popped up on the screen right now.
I got dreams, got things that I want to do.